Hey everybody, it's Ken McElroy here, and I am very happy to have the president, my partner of our company, Lesley Brice. Hey, Lesley.
Hi, Kenny.
So normally Lesley and I are talking on a daily basis and texting every single day, but the last few weeks have been really, really difficult, obviously with everything we have going on with all of our residents. And thanks for taking just a moment. I mean, even to schedule you on the Zoom took all right
You had
after
to wait
this.
a week.
Yeah, I know you've got a lot going on right now. So first of all, thanks. The purpose of this is obviously to talk about, some of the things that we're doing for our residents, and then also some of the things that we're doing for our investors and our properties and our employees. So without further ado, let's talk about, the 5 things that we're doing for our residents, because you and I kind of identified, we've really stepped up. We're trying to help people. This is a humanitarian issue. So let's discuss that. What are some of the things that you want to discuss and educate everybody about that we're doing as landlords?
I think technically speaking, not a lot changed. I mean, we had to make a few minor adjustments, but it's more how you work with your teams and how you really treat folks. So keeping really open and serving the needs of the residents and making sure that we're communicating way more. And figuring out a way to be virtually open at our properties rather than physically open, and finding whatever resources we can for the residents and for the team members, and giving back as much as we can. Those are the main ways we've
Let's
stepped up.
break those up. Let's start with the first one.
Yep.
So the first thing I know that you did in March was we went virtual, and so a lot of people are wondering, like, how do you run a business virtually? So, you guys think about it. We have 8,000 residents that, are moving in, moving out, paying rent. They have maintenance issues. They have, I'm hearing there's lots of problems in between everybody's home. So there's all this noise going on. And so there's all these things that are still going on in these properties, and we're trying to practice the CDC guidelines. So what are some of the things that we're using that we can help people, educate them for the next few months on rent collection?
Well, it was important, first of all, that we were immediately shut down physically at the offices. So if you have an office, it was a really tough decision in the beginning because we weren't really sure if closing the offices was the right thing to do, but how do we do that without losing connection with the residents? So we decided to close our doors to foot traffic, but be virtually open, being distant from folks, but not socially. So physically distant, but not socially distant from them. So we had to come up with ways of the residents being able to communicate with our teams for service requests. So if they had something that needed to be done, protocols needed to be put into place so that our team knew exactly what items they could, should, or shouldn't handle within the units or within the apartments. So, we immediately had to come up with protocols on how we were going to enter into units and when we were going to enter into units. So establishing a guideline for emergency procedures.
And what were those things?
Well, it's, for most things, it's fire, flood, or blood. That standard on-call procedure kind of went into play for the day-to-day operation. So whenever we have a resident who has an emergency with AC or heating, cooking, because they're home all the time, so we wanted to make sure that all of their cooking equipment is working, the oven, the stove, and the refrigerator, disposal, making sure that the plumbing's working, and anything that could wait did or has been handled virtually. We've been educating the customers on how to do service themselves and, replacing bulbs and putting filters outside of their homes so that they can change the air conditioning filters themselves and, you know, have a quick how-to. So it's a lot of communication, but the fear from the team was one of the biggest obstacles that we had to work around. It's like, we don't know if folks have COVID-19. And so it was important to us to screen every resident in terms of a service request. We had asked every resident, has anybody in the home been ill? Has anybody been tested for COVID-19? And, you know, gone are the days of the privacy related to asking folks about their personal health. While we don't share it with other customers, it was important that we were protecting the team by asking these important questions from the folks that are living in
that actually works both ways, right? Because we have our teams going into people's homes, and I know, why don't you explain what PPE is?
PPE is personal protective equipment, and PPE for our team members meant gloves, face masks, bunny suits or jumpsuits that zip up, and we were able to get our hands on some face shields as well. You know, we were lucky in that as soon as we heard about the outbreak, we ordered and had that stuff on hand. So we were really well prepared. And we've ordered and sent them to the properties. The issue is having a replenishment of that supply and making sure folks know how to use it properly. So there was a great deal of communication with the team on how best to use those items. But they also needed, you know, hand sanitizer, which everybody knows is like gold right now. One of the most difficult things to get. So, you know, we had to have backup plans for all of that, where they can wash their hands, soap and water, you know, making sure that they're distanced from each other, and
right,
just things you never thought you had to think about.
I know. What's cool is that we've also identified things that we're going to adopt, you know, moving forward as a just general, you know, routine with with servicing our residents. Let's talk a little bit about how people pay rent. You know, I know we use Rent Cafe, right? Let's talk about that, and let's talk about how we're communicating with people. How are they contacting us? Because obviously, a lot of times, you know, you got to know, do you have their emails? You know, is there on Facebook? And you know what I mean? There's all kinds of ways that people are reaching out. So let's talk about communication and how people are paying rent.
Well, and you were right about Rent Cafe. Rent Cafe is part of our software program, Yardi. And within Yardi, you know, anytime somebody moves in, we enter in all of their demographic information, which includes where they work, how to contact them, you know, and various and sundry other things. But it's important that we have good contact information. So even every time we take a work order, we confirm their phone number so that we can communicate with them. So having their phone number, their email address right in the system so that we can e-blast, you know, an email, an SMS text. We've done multiple communiques to the residents long before the first of the month, just letting them know how to get signed up if they don't have themselves set up for electronic payment. We were really lucky in that a lot of our customers were already set up to pay online automatically. And, you know, it was important to us that we had an affordable way for them to do that, because, you know, credit card companies charge a lot of money to pay with credit card online. And so it was important to us that our residents had the ability to pay through EFT right through their checking account for $0. So they had instructions immediately in their hands for those who hadn't already signed up for it. And that's one thing, like you were alluding to before, Ken. We weren't requiring it of every resident when they were moving in before, but guess what? We are now, and we will going forward. So making sure every resident pays online, it's just how most things get done anyway.
Yeah, thank you. And that's been a great way. So I guess one of the lessons is, you know, if you're going to be a landlord, you need to have all the information of the people that are renting from you. We already had all that in place. And if you don't, obviously you're going to be at a massive disadvantage from a communication standpoint. And you know, we've been really fortunate around that. Let's talk about, you know, the empathy side of all of this, right? Because here's the reality if a resident can't pay, then we have a problem with paying other people, like the lender and the property taxes, insurance. So all this is happening right now. What are we doing around with our residents themselves? I know that in late March, we sent out some communications to everybody, and we have this, what we call the PTP, or the Promise to Pay program. Why don't we talk about that? And, what happens when people come in or I guess they're not even coming in, they're just doing it virtually. What happens if they're having some hardship?
Well, we definitely armed the team ahead of time with what to say and do with the customers. First of all, our decision, long before there were discussions about rent collection, was with everything that's happening, is we're not going to charge late fees, and we're going to set up a Promise to Pay program where we're allowing residents to pay basically on a weekly basis. So, the requirements under the CARES Act, if folks are familiar with that, is that there's a moratorium on evictions happening right now. And, if your property has a Freddie or Fannie loan, they won't be able to do evictions for 120 days. There's a moratorium on that. So, we had to look at that across the board. And even without having that, we knew what we wanted to do was waive late fees and communicate with the customers as much as possible in order to at least get them calling us and communicating when their rents were going to be coming in. And, we were fortunate in knowing, where our residents work, and we're in constant communication with them. So knowing when somebody's laid off helped us to connect them with resources. In every state that we operate in, there's something different. Like in Arizona, it was a great way to connect them with what the governor here is doing on the rent relief program. And in Texas, there's another rent relief program. And so getting those folks to communicate with us, it was important to us to send a letter saying, we care about you. Please communicate with us. We can help you. Don't be afraid to talk to us if you have a need.
Right. I think the decision we all made in mid-March was we want to keep people in their homes, period. Mm-hmm. Let's figure that out. Let's make that the standard and figure that out. And I think here we are. I guess it's the first part of April, and almost all the people have been communicating with us in one way or another, right?
Yeah, and if they haven't, we've been reaching out to them. We've got team members who, if they're not busy, because let's say, for example, our renovation program was something we put on hold. We had some of those folks available to just, help communicate with the customers and do, other work on the properties preventative wise. But for us, it's about communicating with them, especially our senior sites, well check calls, not just for rent. How are you doing? What can we do for you? We want to be, a help for you and connect you with the food bank or connect you with others who have assistance. And so many people are when you're at home, emotions can run really high. We've had some customers really get, upset, and what we do is work hard to mitigate against that and just empathize with them.
Right. Yeah. They have reason to be upset. I mean, this is a tough time, and we actually luckily we don't have any staff that has COVID-19, but we definitely have residents that have it. How are we dealing with that?
Well, it was important to have a protocol in place before we needed it. We talked a lot about that before we had any cases, and immediately we set up a program where all of the service team and all of the managers were communicated to. If there's a known case at your property, immediately those keys get pulled from the key box, first of all, and so that nobody's going in there. And, because we can't tell other folks where someone lives that has COVID-19. There are privacy issues centered around that. We still have an obligation to let our residents know that there's a known case in the community. And so we set about communicating to the customers through e-blast and putting things up on the mailbox area and the front door of the office to make sure that they were aware. You know, everybody should assume that somebody's either asymptomatic or possibly has COVID-19. And so it's our obligation to let folks know that there's a known issue. So our team members are not going to go into those units. We set each site up with a third-party vendor who is equipped to do that understands the CDC guidelines with how to clean. And we set up protocols for every vacant unit. If we got keys on a unit and somebody moved out and we don't know if they had it, we're waiting 72 hours to make sure there's a chance for COVID-19 to just die. There are a lot of other protocols that went into place in terms of what kind of cleaning supplies that they're using and ways that they're cleaning the unit. So it was important that we had that all ready to go. And so the teams on site on the front line know exactly what to do with a customer that may have it. Now, if we had a team member that had it, it's a little different. We immediately shut the office down and everybody goes home, quarantines for the prescribed period of time. We're prepared for that. If it does happen, we're hoping it doesn't, but we need to be ready.
Right. And I also think it's important for people to know that, you know, obviously we have our own management company. And so we already had things in place for, you know, things like this. It wasn't the COVID, but, you know, we've had tons of issues inside of units over the years where we have to bring in a restoration type company and they come in with, you know, much higher grade, higher levels of, you know, procedures and cleaning, right?
Agree. Yes. Yep. And those are things we can't get our hands on per se, not at that level, but a good third cup of bleach to 1 gallon of water goes a long way as well, according to the CDC. So we're doing all we can there. Yeah,
that's really important. So how, like, I know, like one of the things is, which is awesome, you personally are involved at a local level, past chairman of the board, but also at the National Apartment Association level. In fact, you were in Washington, D.C. with their congressman when this whole thing started and you had to fly back early, right?
Yeah. It's when the announcement came out and they canceled the rest of the conference and went home. But yeah, you know, we're all banding together with information. What's wonderful about the network of folks in our industry is that, you know, we're all in this together, you know, and sharing best practices, sharing, you know, what kind of communication to our customers, what kind of notices we could give to them, and how to interpret the law. I mean, there's so much going on with the different requirements. What does it mean to have a moratorium on evictions? And, you know, how are they measuring, you know, their delinquency? Just a million different things that we're communicating about, but it's very helpful.
Yeah, it's incredible that you're on those, you know, in those networks, because, you know, we're literally learning from hundreds of companies like ours around the country, and just the best practices. You know, so there's some people out there doing some really amazing things. And so let's roll into that, because one of the things that happens, I think, in a crisis is, for me personally, is we get to see how our teams perform. And it's been awesome. And you know, one of the things that's kind of come through this is everybody's willingness to serve and to give back, you know, to our residents and to other people that are potentially affected. Let's talk a little bit about that, because I think that's an important piece.
We've heard so many stories about, you know, neighbors helping neighbors and team members helping residents and each other. It's pretty amazing to watch how a group comes together. I've heard of a lot of folks going, especially for our senior sites, helping them get groceries and helping them, you know, get their medicines and being there. I think mostly it's the social thing that right now. You know, I think a lot of people have what they need at our sites, and haven't really been asking for a lot in terms of resources for food and such as yet. But, it's more of a social thing. They come up to our maintenance guys all the time, and want to chat with them, and we're encouraging our team members to make sure that they're keeping, the distance, but being empathetic to folks around them. It's been one of the most heartwarming things to hear and see, getting all of our team members on a phone call just to hear what their obstacles are. We've heard so many different stories about things, even as easy as somebody is playing on the playground equipment, and they're worried about those kids out there, and how do we keep them safe, and shut down the amenities, and empathize with them when they say, well, we need something to do, and we want those amenities open. But it's really just over communicating with the customers and with the team.
Right, good. Well, and let's talk real quickly before we end this piece on, what we're doing for the residents. But in 2008, we went through a correction. It was a very different reason, but we created then this, the good life promises, right? Which were, people, the thing about apartments or being a landlord, that people have things happen, medically, they have income loss, and, they have loss of life, and things like that happen when you're, running a company like this. And so we already had a lot of these protocols in place. But what happened is in 2008, we really kind of came together and rolled out an incredible program there that worked really well for us. And that was 12 years ago. But now we just kind of dusted that off and put it back in place. And let's talk about, because I think there's some really key nuggets in what we call the good life promises. Let's talk just a little bit about that.
Well, so you're right. They were aimed at a time where we were in economic hardship, and now it's a health crisis that's going to lead to an economic hardship. That it's really important to be open to hearing what the customers are going through, and I think that's really how we crafted them. They basically consist of being flexible with allowing folks to pay rent late. And in 2008, it was more about allowing them to pay late, once or twice during their lease term, and not charging them a late fee. At this point, we're not going to charge late fees for the next 3 months. That's our plan, is no late fees for anybody for the next 3 months. And we're going to continue to communicate with them. But we're also allowing them the ability to transfer from a unit, let's say that's larger, down to a smaller one, or a different size if they're going to double up with people. So being flexible with the lease in that form, so that folks have that ability to go from one to another. And working really hard to re-rent an apartment if they say they just have to leave for unknown reasons, or for whatever reason, just helping them re-rent that apartment so that it mitigates their costs. Along with several other items, like, the good life promises, if somebody's not happy with their apartment, we'll allow them to move out. If they move in and in 30 days they're not happy, you can leave, no questions asked. We put our money where our mouth is. So, those are the things that I think are coming back now, easy to offer things, and it breeds so much communication with the customers, getting service requests done within 24 hours. That's changed slightly. We can't do all of them within 24 hours, but we will do the emergency within 24 hours.
I mean, I can't believe it. I think in 1 month we had like 700 work orders or something.
Work orders.
Yeah. So like, people are home now, and so they're communicating with our staff more. Been very interesting. You would have thought that work orders would have went down, but they actually went up. Right.
They're at home.
Yeah.
They're at home. And so, but they're really understanding. The key is communicating with them. This is where we stand and why we're doing it the way we're doing it. We let them know ahead of time. Things like accepting packages. We for a long time, we were accepting packages at the offices, and Now it's just, nope, they're going to be all delivered to your front door. And it was an immediate change to all of the properties, and the customers just rolled right with it. They understand what's going on. But the key was communicating with them and, you know, and being empathetic with their concerns if they had any.
Right, right. And let's finish on one really, really high note. So we all get together a lot. I mean, you and I text multiple times a day, and we just, you know, our leadership team all gets, there's 8 of us that get together once a week for an hour and a half to just go over high level issues. And one of the great things that came out of that was the food bank decision, right? So why don't you, I'll let you talk about that, because I think everybody's, we had people on the phone crying, you know, so we have a foundation called the Sharing the Good Life Foundation. It's a 501c3 that we've set up a while ago that we fund for times like this. And so let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was, I'm going to back up and start with saying we've got a program, VTO program, volunteer time off program. And a lot of the team members were clamoring with wanting to give time and energy. And right now it's so difficult to give time and energy. You can give money and you can give your time virtually, but to get out and actually tactily, you know, deliver food to somebody, it's not something that we're equipped to do. And so we talked a lot about how can we give back to those who have a system to deliver to the folks that we need. And so we looked at every one of the regions that we're in, the 7 regions that we're in, and we found local food banks or kitchen on the street type of 501c3s that we could give to, so that they could mobilize food and other items to folks. So yeah, we gave 5,000 to each one of those, and that got matched by our partner. And so we've got $70,000 that was given over the last week to the local food banks that directly affect the customers where we operate. It was really important to us that we give back into those communities that can give right back to our residents and the folks around us.
Right.
So
right.
awesome.
That was great. So Lesley, thank you. Those are some great tips and things that we're doing with our residents. I know, you know, we just went through April rent collection. There's a lot of people in pain. Now we're moving to May. I think May is going to be worse. It's really, really important, guys, that we're working with people here. I can assure you the residents, your tenants, do not want to be kicked out. And I can assure you that the banks, your lenders, do not want these properties back. So there's nothing better than communicating. And thank you, Lesley. These are some great ideas and great tips. Appreciate all your hard work.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ken. My pleasure.